Since the first ever Super Bowl was played back in January of 1967 between the Green Bay Packers and the Kansas City Chiefs in the LA Coliseum, there have been a total of 56 Super Bowl champions. Every team has left a legacy which will last forevermore, but sports fans often like to debate which Super Bowl winning team throughout history was the best. Who would beat who if they played head to head? As always with a video like this, the opinions are very subjective and we'll never know for sure how they would fare playing against each other, especially with the huge differences in rules over time. But just judging how great these teams were in their respective eras, how talented these teams were and how dominant they played as a unit, here are my top 10 Super Bowl champions of all time as of 2022. For reference, to qualify for this list, the team had to win the Super Bowl, obviously, and there can only be one entry per dynasty. Not per franchise necessarily, just per dynasty. For example, I could choose the 1997 Denver Broncos and the 2015 Denver Broncos, but not the 97 and 98 Broncos. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. Number 10, the 2013 Seattle Seahawks. The 2013 Seahawks posted a 13-3 regular season record and earned the trip to Super Bowl 48 at MetLife Stadium, where they faced one of the greatest offenses of all time, the Denver Broncos, led by 2013 MVP and future Hall of Fame quarterback Peyton Manning. That same offense clashed with one of the most iconic defenses of the past decade, the Legion of Boom, consisting of a secondary which is amongst one of the most feared units in league history, with Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, and Byron Maxwell. The Seahawks defense put on one of the greatest performances in Super Bowl history, holding Denver to just 8 points in comparison to their 43, leading to the Super Bowl MVP being won by linebacker Malcolm Smith. The defense, combined with the emergence of second-year quarterback Russell Wilson as one of the game's star players, and Marshawn Lynch playing arguably the best football of his career, led to the team winning the franchise's only Super Bowl to date. Perhaps the Seahawks would have won the Super Bowl the following season if the defense wasn't badly beat up in Super Bowl 49 and Pete Carroll decided to run the ball from the 1-yard line instead of passing right into the box. Number 9, the 1996 Green Bay Packers. This was the franchise's first title since Vince Lombardi led the Packers of the 1967 season to a victory over the Raiders in Super Bowl II. Green Bay's greatest ever team came in 1962, which was in the pre-Super Bowl days. That season they won the NFL championship against the New York Giants. However, their greatest team since the 1966 season came 30 years after they won Super Bowl I. Brett Favre's Packers team not only led the league in scoring offense, but scoring defense too. This team featured MVP Brett Favre and Hall of Fame defensive end Reggie White, but the star of the Super Bowl win was a return specialist named Desmond Howard, who accumulated 244 total return yards, including a 99-yard kick return for a touchdown. Finally, after several years of having a great team which couldn't quite get past the Cowboys or the 49ers in the postseason, the Mike Holmgren-led Packers team finally brought the Lombardi Trophy home to Green Bay after beating the New England Patriots 35-21 in Super Bowl 31. The Packers returned to the Super Bowl the following seasons as heavy favorites to repeat, but Mike Shanahan's Broncos team had other ideas and the Packers fell in a close 31-24 game. Astonishingly, it would be the last time the Brett Favre-Reggie White Packers would make it to the final game of the year. Number 8, the 1999 St. Louis Rams. The Rams' high-powered offense was well worthy of their greatest show on turf nickname. The most impressive part of this team was quarterback Kurt Warner, who had one of the most unlikely seasons in NFL history, going from an Arena League football player to Super Bowl MVP, passing for 41 touchdowns in the process. Come playoff time, the Rams' offensive firepower was on full display against the Minnesota Vikings. With Randy Moss and Chris Carter on the other side, the shootout ended in a 49-37 victory for the Rams in what is still one of the highest scoring playoff games of all time. As great as their offense was though, in the championship game in the Super Bowl, the Rams' defense had to step up to the plate and lead them to glory. The shootout against the Vikings was followed by a close and gritty 11-6 win in the championship game over the Buccaneers, with stellar defensive play all game from both squads. 2 weeks later, the first Super Bowl of the 21st century came down to a spectacular tackle by Rams linebacker Mike Jones, who stopped Titans receiver Kevin Dyson a yard short of the end zone on the final play of the game in a 23-16 win to capture the Rams' first ever Super Bowl title. Number 7, the 1991 Washington Redskins. I had to put one of Joe Gibbs' Redskins teams on here. It was a close call between the 91 team and the 82 team with Theismann and Riggins. As great as the 82 team was, I couldn't justify putting a team that only played half a season with the 1982 NFL strike on this list over the 91 team. If the 82 team played their full 16 games, I have no doubt that they would be on this list, quite possibly in place of the 91 team, because I feel as though the 82 team was slightly more talented. That being said, the 1991 Redskins team was fantastic. They beat the Buffalo Bills in Super Bowl 26, 37-24, making Joe Gibbs the only coach in NFL history to win 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks, with Mark Rypien Franklin having the game of his career against the Bills in the Super Bowl to win game MVP honors. This team, however, was not all about the quarterback like some teams are. It was about the Hogs up front and their exceptional offensive line play from Jeff Bostic, Ray Brown, Joe Jacoby, Russ Grimm, and Don Warren, forcing open holes so wide that any running back would be able to run through them. The Hogs are truly one of the greatest units in NFL history and a huge part of the reason why Gibbs' Redskins teams were so dominant throughout the 80s and early 90s, despite having several quarterbacks on the carousel during this era. The Hogs allowed Mark Rippon plenty of time to locate a 1,000-yard receiver in 1991 Ark Monk. He recorded 71 receptions for 1,049 yards, leading to a 14-2 regular season record. In the playoffs, the Redskins slaughtered the Lions 41-10 in the championship game, and in Super Bowl 26, the great Buffalo Bills defense, consisting of the league's all-time leader in sacks Bruce Smith and also Cornelius Bennett and Darryl Talley, were overpowered by the Hogs as the Redskins dominated the game, winning 37-24. Number 6, the 1986 New York Giants. The 86 Giants were the only team in NFL history to feature a linebacker that won NFL MVP, and he certainly deserved it, posting 20.5 sacks. Lawrence Taylor may not have been quite as dominant if it weren't for a man named Bill Belichick, who designed schemes that put all of those players in positions to make plays in every single game. The same basic philosophy that allowed him to win 3 Super Bowls in the early 2000s with the New England Patriots. But this was Bill Parcells' team, and it took him just 4 years to turn the Giants into champions, losing only 2 games that season, one in a close game against Dallas on opening night, struggling to stop former Heisman Trophy winner Herschel Walker. But after that first game, they never looked back and they dominated the league. Parcells and Belichick's dominant 3-4 defense, known as the Big Blue Wrecking Crew, led by Lawrence Taylor, Carl Banks, Harry Carlson, and Leonard Marshall, and an offense under the direction of Phil Simms, knocked off the San Francisco 49ers 49-3 in the divisional playoffs. Holding a Bill Walsh coached team consisting of Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Tom Rathman, Dwight Clark, and Roger Craig to just 3 points alone makes this team worthy of making the list. But having an offense which could drop 49 points on a defense which ranks 3rd in the league that season and also had Ronnie Lott in the secondary makes this Giants team legendary. The Giants beat the Redskins 17-0 in the championship game the following week, earning the team a matchup with the Denver Broncos in Super Bowl 21 at the Rose Bowl. The defense, as per usual, played outstanding football, but they also allowed a few big plays to be made by John Elway and the Cinderella Broncos in the first half. The momentum of the game turned around on a goal line stand in the second quarter, forming the equivalent of a brick wall around the goal line, making it impossible for the Broncos to infiltrate. Thanks to a missed field goal by Rich Collis, the Giants went into the second half down 10-9 instead of 17-9. But the Giants displayed their true talent in the second half, dominating the game from there on, with Bill Simms having one for the ages, going 22 for 25 and passing for 268 yards and 3 touchdowns, setting the all-time NFL record for completion percentage in a postseason game. Number 5, the 1993 Dallas Cowboys. This Cowboys team at full strength could have easily gone 16-0, but instead they went 12-4, losing their first 2 games due to their starting running back Emmitt Smith not being signed, and the other 2 due to him being injured. Once Smith joined the Cowboys in Week 3, the team cruised, even at the absence of quarterback Troy Aikman, who was replaced by former Cleveland Browns quarterback Bernie Kosar. The most memorable game of this team's season came in the regular season finale against the Giants for the number 1 seed in the NFC and the NFC East Division title. Emmitt Smith, the league's most valuable player that year, dislocated his shoulder but played through the pain and led his team to victory, rushing for 168 yards and catching 10 passes for 62 yards and a touchdown against a brutal Giants defense with a dislocated shoulder. The playoffs were a breeze for Jimmy Johnson's Cowboys. They walked all over Brett Favre and Reggie White and Sterling Sharp as they rolled past the Green Bay Packers 27-17 for a championship rematch with the 49ers. Johnson was so confident in his team that he guaranteed his Cowboys would beat their rival team, which they did easily, taking a 28-7 halftime lead and winning the game 38-21. However, the victory came at a cost. Troy Aikman suffered a bad concussion in the second half of the game, and although Kosar played well in his absence, he was not the Hall of Fame quarterback that Troy was. There were serious doubts regarding Aikman's status for the Super Bowl in 1 week's time. This was the only year in NFL history where there was just a 1 week gap between the championship game and the Super Bowl, as the league elected to have 2 bye weeks during the regular season instead of 1. Of course, this was January 1994 and concussions weren't taken as seriously as they are today, so 1 week after the game, Aikman suited up, but he was nowhere near himself, and it led to the Cowboys falling behind 13-6 at halftime. However, after some adjustments from Johnson, the league's MVP Emmitt Smith had the game of his life, as did his offensive line up front, as Smith rushed for over 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. On the other side of the ball, James Washington also had a hell of a game on defense, causing a fumble, recovering a fumble, and returning one for a touchdown, and intercepting a pass in the same game. If it hadn't been for Emmitt Smith's incredible performance, then it's highly likely that James Washington would have been the MVP of the game. The Cowboys dominated the second half, shutting the high-powered Bills offense out for 30 minutes and outscoring their opponents 24-0, winning the game 30-13 overall and becoming only the 5th team in league history to win back-to-back Super Bowls. The Cowboys won their second Lombardi Trophy, but it would be their last under Jimmy Johnson. The Cowboys won another Super Bowl in 1995, but they would never again be as dominant as they were in Johnson's last season. Number 4, the 1978 Pittsburgh Steelers. There were a few Steelers teams to choose from, but the 78 team stands out as Chuck Noll's finest team ever. By 1978, Noll had truly transformed Pittsburgh from a laughingstock into the city of champions. Everybody knows how dominant the Steel Curtain defense was, with the likes of Joe Green, Jack Lambert, Mel Blount, Jack Ham, and several others that have been enshrined in Canton. But unlike in previous years, the 78 team's offense was also on par. Terry Bradshaw was at the top of his game, and he had the likes of John Stallworth and Lynn Swann to throw the ball to, and Franco Harris and Rocky Bleier to hand the ball off to, with holes being opened up by Steelers legend Mike Webster at center. This team won a close game with the Cowboys in Super Bowl 13 in a matchup which would decide once and for all who would be the team of the 70s. The game turned out to be arguably the most exciting Super Bowl of all time. As far as talent is concerned, the 70s Steelers may be the best team to ever play. I don't think there has ever been a team with so many weapons and Hall of Fame talent on both sides of the ball. Head to head, I don't think I'd pick any team to beat the 1978 Steelers. A team which allowed just 195 points all season in the first ever 16-game season and blew out almost every team they played, leading to a 14-2 record. In the playoffs, they recorded a 33-10 crushing of the former AFC champions Denver Broncos and a 34-3 whooping of AFC Central rivals Houston Oilers in the championship game. The only team in 1978 which gave the Steel Curtain defense any trouble whatsoever was Tom Landry's Cowboys in the Super Bowl, proving just how great the Cowboys were under Landry and Staubach, and they absolutely deserve an honorable mention on this list. But the Super Bowl also showed how great the Steelers were to manage to hang in there and beat the Cowboys, and rightfully claim the title as team of the 1970s. Number 3, the 1984 San Francisco 49ers. This was certainly Bill Walsh's finest team. It was a close call between the 1989 team coached by Walsh's predecessor George Seifert and the 84 team, but the 1984 team gets the nod from me. The 49ers finished 15-1 and was very close to becoming the second team in NFL history to complete a perfect season, losing only one game in 1984 to the Pittsburgh Steelers by 3 points. Imagine how fitting it would have been to cap off their perfect season against Don Shula's Dolphins, the only team to ever have a perfect season, and one of the most remarkable offenses of all time. The 49ers held Dan Marino's record-setting offense to only one touchdown in the 38-16 win in Super Bowl 19, giving Bill Walsh and Super Bowl MVP Joe Montana their second world championship of the 80s. The 1989 team with Jerry Rice and John Taylor may be the more talented squad, but Bill Walsh coached his team consisting of stars such as Montana playing at his finest football ever, Dwight Clark playing at an elite level, and the emergence of Roger Craig, and of course Ronnie Lott laying a hit stick on defense. If you ever get the chance to check out NFL Films' Super Bowl 19 highlights, you'll see just how great Bill Walsh's game plan was for taking down a seemingly unstoppable offense in Miami, and making an all-time great coach such as Don Shula look like a complete fool for 60 minutes. It's also worth noting that this team shut out Mike Ditka and Buddy Ryan's Bears 23-0 in the championship game, a very impressive accomplishment when you factor in how good they were just 1 year later. Number 2, the 1972 Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins are the only team to finish with a goose egg in the L column. They finished the regular season at 14-0 and won Super Bowl 7 against the Redskins 14-7. Larry Zonka, Mercury Morris, Bob Greasy, or Earl Morrall when Greasy was hurt, and Paul Warfield, the receiver, made for an electric offense. The no-name defense recorded 3 shutouts and would have done so in the Super Bowl if it wasn't for a botched field goal attempt which the Redskins returned for a touchdown late in the game, so the score ended up being 14-7. Instead of what their perfect record would have been that season. Their overall record was 17-0, and for that reason and that reason only, they make the number 2 spot on this list. If I'm being perfectly honest, I think if any of the other 9 teams on this list played them, I couldn't see the Dolphins winning. In fact, They only just won each of their playoff games by 1 score. That being said, what Shula and the Dolphins accomplished was remarkable, so much so that no other team since has been able to duplicate what they did. Only the 2007 Patriots managed to put together a perfect regular season, but lost in the Super Bowl and therefore did not make the list. Had the 2007 Patriots done so, I would of course have to have placed them at number 2 at the very least. So for that reason, I can't put the Dolphins any lower than the number 2 spot, and I can't diminish their achievement. They may have had a weak schedule, but you can only beat who's put in front of you. Regardless of who you play, it's almost impossible to win every game in the NFL, but the Dolphins did just that, and that achievement will live on forevermore even if another team manages to do it. However, there's one team at present I have no problem placing ahead of the Dolphins, and that is the 1985 Chicago Bears. Even if the David Tyree catch in Super Bowl 42 never happened, or if Asante Samuel never drops the interception on the final drive of the game in Super Bowl 42, I would still be tempted to put the Bears at number 1, simply because of how badly they dominated their opponents, especially in the playoffs. I think that is so impressive that in spite of their one loss, I would place them ahead of the Patriots and the Dolphins. If you're old enough to remember watching the 1985 Chicago Bears at the time, you probably wondered how any team would ever be able to stop them for years to come. This was by far the most dominant team of all time, outscoring opponents by a total of 258 points, the most in NFL history. Thanks in most part to an unstoppable 46 defense, consisting of Hall of Famers such as Mike Singletary, Dan Hampton, and Richard Dent. In the playoffs, the Bears shut out the Giants and the Rams and destroyed the Patriots in the Super Bowl 46-10. Those 10 points that the Patriots scored were the only 10 points which the Bears allowed all postseason. But to make up for those 10 points, the Bears took out the frustration with devastating hits and struck fear into their opposition by making it appear as though the entire defense was blitzing before sending players back into coverage, which was essentially what the 46 defense that Buddy Ryan created was. This led to 7 turnovers being forced by the Bears, which was at the time the second most ever recorded in the Super Bowl. The most memorable play of the game was a 1-yard touchdown run by 335-pound lineman William the Refrigerator Perry, a moment which head coach Mike Ditka would soon regret for stealing away Walter Payton's dream of scoring a touchdown in the Super Bowl, Payton being the greatest player in the history of the Bears and nearing the end of his career. Payton may not have had the best game of his career in the Super Bowl, but the importance of his presence was arguably more important than any other Bears player on offense. The Patriots came into Super Bowl 20 with the goal of stopping Walter Payton, who had rushed for an impressive 1,551 yards and 11 touchdowns in 1985, and putting the game in the hands of other Bears such as Matt Suhey, Jim McMahon, and Willie Gault. The Patriots did an excellent job of stopping Payton, but unfortunately for Raymond Berry's Patriots, Payton's teammates lighting up the defense and scoring touchdowns left, right, and center, accounting for just as many points. The fact that the Bears didn't go on to dominate the NFL for several more years is due to the dissolved partnership of Buddy Ryan, the team's defensive coordinator, and Mike Ditka. Neither would win a championship without the other for the remainder of their careers, but the legacy that they left in Chicago will be discussed forevermore.